The bell has rung. So get seated and join Elementary Schooled for today's interview.
This is Melanie Whipple from Elementary Schooled. Let me tell you about this workout, Legree. Have you heard of it? It is so incredible. Last year, I went through a nightmare experience medically. I had a routine surgery that led me into an emergency, very unplanned, double surgeries. It was a nightmare. I've been a runner for 20 years, and I really thought this might be the end of it for me. I don't know if I'll ever get myself back in shape. This has been the workout that's really gotten me back on my feet. See if it's in your area and check it out. And if you happen to be in my area in Farmington, Utah, talk to Erin or Rebecca. They are lovely ladies and they will get you going. Thank you so much, Viva Legree, for your sponsorship this year.
Welcome. This is season 2, episode 9 of Elementary Schooled. And today we are talking about obsessive compulsive disorder in children. And I'm pleased to have our guest, Paul Peterson. You have been the CEO and founder of the OCD and Anxiety Treatment Center for the last 8 years. You have specialized in the treatment of OCD, anxiety, and other anxiety issues, providing over 40,000 therapy sessions in your career. That's a lot. I'm processing that. You have treatment facilities all throughout Utah and also in Mesa, Arizona. Your treatment centers are currently getting the highest reduction of symptoms nationwide. Congratulations. You have plans to open an additional 6 locations across the nation in 2024. Good for you. This tells us that's really needed, right?
It is. It's everywhere.
So let me ask, is it that there's more of it or we're just more aware?
I think it's both. I think that we have a lot of things that weren't happening back in the day, right? We were forced to be outside. We were forced to have do more. I think we're a society of convenience, right? Back in the day, we used to hang out in the river bottoms and play, and now the kids hang out and are limiting themselves from experiences of life. And I think that, being on Netflix and social media and, they're not going outside as much. And so I think that's one. And then the other, I think, is that there's much more awareness. I think there's always been a lot of anxiety, and the awareness of that those behaviors are maybe not a behavioral issue, but more it is an issue of anxiety.
Yeah. How do parents differentiate? Is this just anxiety, or when does it cross over into being an obsessive compulsive disorder? Can you kind of describe the difference?
Sure. Well, everybody has obsessive thoughts, right? But the difference between having an obsessive thought and obsessive compulsive disorder thought is that there is a magnitude of distress that comes when that thought comes in. And so using a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the highest level of distress a person could feel, 0 not feeling any at all, that thought for someone else who doesn't have the disorder, they could be a 0. But for this person who has the OCD, they could be an 8. They could be a 10. They could be a 20 out of 10 for it. And so with a kid who's having it, well, if they're running high with anxiety, well, okay, everybody can have some anxiety, but theirs doesn't stop. It keeps going. Most people experience anxiety for moments, not minutes, hours, days, or even weeks at a time. And so I think that's one of the things you can see is that, well, it's just not turning off.
I know one year I had a student that the way she exhibited her obsessive compulsive disorder was she would pull out her eyelashes when she was feeling the anxiety when it got too heightened.
Pulling out eyelashes, having some, what they call it, trichotillomania, does definitely create a soothing effect, right? But a lot of the symptoms they could experience could be wanting to isolate themselves. They're shy. When I hear that a child is shy, I'm like, oh, they have an anxiety disorder. Because why do you need to be shy? Why would you not just open your mouth and share things?
Hmm.
If there's no
Thought about that
distress,
actually.
yeah, if there's no distress when you talk, then you just talk.
Hmm.
But for them, they don't, because see, if I say something, then I might feel those feelings that will come inside when I start saying something. And so if I don't say something, then I don't risk having those feelings. I don't risk being judged, risk being lesser of a person.
So do we mask it then by saying this, or just label it that this child is shy?
Yeah, the kid's shy. If they were to say something, be forced to say something, you ask them where they are on that scale. I guarantee you they're not going to say I'm a 0 or a 1. They're going to be an 8, a 10, a 15, redlining. That's why they're not saying something. Shy
Mm,
is not because I just don't have anything to say. Oh, they have stuff, lots of things to say.
they do,
They just
yeah.
don't feel they'd get
Comfortable.
triggered by saying it.
Hmm.
See, the brain is very smart. We neutralize. We do things to regulate. So if I feel this feeling inside, the body is going to say, "Well, let's make you feel better." And what
Yeah.
is it? What am I going to do? So, for example, if I put my hand on a red hot burner, my brain says, "Hey, that's burning your hand. You better take it off." So my brain says, "Pull it away." I pull it away. I get relief. It teaches me things. Well, it's the same thing. I say something. My brain says, "Ooh." And I say something and it triggers me to give me lots of anxiety. My brain says, that's bad. Don't do that anymore. And it pulls me away. I get relief. I get almost this reinforcement that says, yes, what you just did there is right. Good thing. We'll do it again. But the problem is it doesn't stop there, because see, they feel anxious, they neutralize. Well, guess what? The next time that they're in that situation, what are they going to do? Well, their brain knows exactly what to do. I'm going to say nothing. And
Yeah.
then what about the next time? And the next time, well, the brain is so accommodating that before you know it, you can't even get your kid to school.
So so that's when the brain develops what we would call coping strategies. Then, if I don't
Yes.
speak, then I don't have to deal with those feelings that come with it.
Yeah.
What do other symptoms look like? So shy could be one, and then anger and frustration, and
Yeah.
maybe we talked about a physical
Yeah. So I've
thing.
seen kids picking their fingers, picking their skin. They are tapping something, getting noise, or being noisy, being disruptive. Uh,
Mhm.
so again, each kid could feel lots of different things. Tired. I've had so many kids when they've just had a bout of tons of anxiety, they go fall right to sleep. Right? They're exhausted. It's like they've just been rock climbing for a long period of time, and they're just emotionally exhausted.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of that too. And I would describe it as emotionally their regulation, they're just shutting down. And
Yeah,
so the things
yeah,
become too much for them. You have that student that's really puts it out there, kind of the class clown behavior you speak of. But then you have the opposite, where a student just shuts down and won't do anything or say anything. And so you feel so bad when you
yeah.
see the signs and know that something, that anxiety is getting so high. When do you know that the child really needs some intervention and some help? How do you
Is it?
assess this?
Yeah, yes, a good question. Is it impacting their everyday life?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody has moments of anxiety. I have a bad day, maybe even a bad weekend, but a bad month, a bad few months, a bad year. There's something more happening.
Yeah. And I've talked to parents, and I'm sure you see this all the time, where the parent feels, I really didn't know. I just thought it would get better. And I thought maybe it was just a new phase. And then the student, the child continues to struggle. And like you said, is really experiencing everyday issues affecting their social life, affecting if they can get their schoolwork done. So this is the best news of all, because your treatment is it so different than other places across the country, because your treatment just makes complete sense. Will you describe it and walk us through that process?
Sure. Well, and this is where I'm a little sensitive, because we have such a high success rate. In fact, The national average is roughly between 30 and 35% as considered to be a successful outcome with therapy.
Meaning a reduction in
A
symptoms?
reduction of symptoms. Yeah,
Okay.
30 to 35%. So right now, if you take everybody who's ever come into our facility, even if they've only came in for treatment for one day, we have an average of 64% reduction in symptoms. If you just take last month and cherry pick that, we're at 72%.
That's amazing.
What's different of what we do is that we don't process emotions. We're not going to talk somebody out of their problems. We're not going to have them write in their journal, explore their past, process their feelings with trauma. It's irrelevant. And that's where we're different, because we see it. We do evidence-based treatments. The evidence has proven that what is happening when somebody has OCD is their brain is lying to their body, saying that something is happening that is not actually happening. That's what OCD is. So if I compare this to diabetes. If somebody was a type 1 diabetic and they're feeling dizzy, nauseous, would you say, well, did you write in your journal about it? How ludicrous would that be? What's interesting with OCD, we do that all the time. That's what the treatment is for probably, I would say 99%. I mean, that's just throwing out my own statistic there, but I would imagine 99% of the therapists, that's where they go. Is we're going to talk your type 1 diabetes better. They're not looking at it. And what's so fascinating is if you look at PET scans, CAT scans, MRIs, you can actually see the malfunction.
In the
You can
brain?
see it. If you type in Google brain lock OCD brain scan, and you'll see a pre and post brain scan. You see it. OCD is happening. There's a physical health issue happening. And that's why the treatment we use is about training the brain to do differently.
And what do you call it?
We call it exposure and response prevention. And it's been around since the 1970s. And you have a lot of people who've read a book or two about it, but you couldn't do the work based on just reading a book or two. It takes time to really understand the intricacies, how to use it. But once you do, it's like, well, this is a game changer. See, it is much like physical therapy to a person's brain. It creates these neural pathways that helps accommodate for the malfunction that's happening in the amygdala. And it's just a beautiful thing. So the brain.
Can you give us an example of exposure and response prevention? So if you have,
for sure,
what you say with a child, then something that you've had before that you've seen.
Sure. So let's say the child is terrified that if they don't turn off a light, then something bad is going to happen to their family. It's called harm OCD, or superstitious OCD is another way to describe it. So exposure, it says that they need to expose themselves to the fearful things that are attacking them. OCD, they feel things. They don't see or hear, but they feel it. They feel it as real as you and me talking. And in fact, if you ask anybody with OCD and you said, if that feeling wasn't there, would you even have a problem with the thoughts that are coming in your head? And they'll be like, no. It's all about the intensity of emotion that rushes through their body. I mean, it's a fight or flight response. It's panic, it's worry, it's concern. Like that kid who doesn't want to forget to flip the switch the right ways, doesn't want to risk being responsible for their families dying. So what we do is we say, expose yourself. You're going to look at that switch and you're not going to flick it. And you might use what we call a hook statement in your head and say, yep, my family probably are going to die now because of me. And everything inside the brain goes, what in the world are you doing? Didn't you feel that 8 out of 10 I just gave you? This was serious stuff. You will not be able to survive yourself if you're responsible for this. And so then it's like, well, maybe this 9 or 10 of anxiety, it actually increases the anxiety. Maybe this will make you stop this madness by facing these fears. But what if you don't do anything to stop it. You do nothing to neutralize that feeling. So you got your exposure, which you're exposing yourself to that thing. And then the response, prevention, is I'm doing nothing to neutralize that feeling. I'm doing nothing to escape. Well, again, the cycle is that when you do it, your distress level is going to go up to make you then stop. But if you don't, your brain begins to learn something. It begins to learn that that nothing happened, or that they didn't die, or that they got to the other side without having to do these compulsions to make it go away.
What I'm hearing from you, once you can get a child to be exposed to like the issue of the light switch, you want them to sit in that space for a while of your family didn't die, or whatever their negative thought process was that was spinning. You want them to kind of just be in that space. Is that,
Yes.
am I hearing that right?
That's right.
So what about a typical one that we see, washing the hands repeatedly, or having a repetitive, a repetitive motion that.
Well, and I'll actually tell you, in our facility, with all the kids, if you lined up 100 of them, maybe 3 to 5 of them have hand washing issues. Actually, hand washing isn't common. That's just what the world is commonly understands it as.
Yeah.
So there's so much more OCD, a lot of mental OCD, but I'll use that one because it's
one that's talked about, right?
This is what they're talked about. That's right. So somebody who's washing their hands is you first you find out what the fear is. Is the fear that they're worried about getting sick, worried about getting someone else sick? Are they? Is it just disgusting? They're just grossed out by it. What is the fearful thing? Well, let's say that the fearful thing is that they're disgusted by it. Like it's the worst thing, like the grossest, biggest contaminant. Well, and let's say it is touching a phone. I mean, maybe they heard that, a phone, and this is really true, the contaminants on a phone are like thousands of times more contaminant than a toilet lid. Right? So maybe they're like, this is gross. Okay, so if an exposure could be, I'm looking at that phone, and maybe I have my tongue sticking out a little bit. And it's got my phone, and my brain's like, oh my gosh, those germs are probably coming over and onto my
jumping
tongue.
Onto your
right. Well,
yeah.
what if I don't? So my natural impulse is I'm going to pull my tongue away. I'm going to put my phone away. But what if I don't? And in fact, my brain is trying to fix it, trying to neutralize it. And to combat that, I actually lean in. I lean in to like, I'm going to bring the phone just an inch more close as my tongue is out. And when I do that, like as I said, I'm not saying things in my head like it's going to be okay. This isn't really going to happen. No, actually, I don't know. Maybe I am going to get sick. Maybe it's the most disgusting thing is going to get on my tongue and it's never going to get off. People with OCD hate uncertainty. They can't stand it. They're seeking for that certainty. If they could just know. But life isn't about knowing. You look at anybody who's truly happy in life, it's not because they know. But OCD wants you to focus on what's in the past or what's in the future. Oh, shoot, this is going to hurt me. This is going to get on me. I'm not going to be able to get it off. Okay, well, I guess cross that bridge when you get there. That's not what OCD says. No. We're going to prepare for it for weeks, months, and years in advance. I'm going to feel all the emotional turmoil as though it happened, even though it hasn't happened.
So you are essentially walking a child through the what if game. What if you got sick? What if you didn't wash your hands right before lunch that day? What if you didn't? I mean, is that?
I actually would say we actually combat what if. We actually they live their life in what if. What if? Like, actually, okay, well, what if? Well, let's possibly make it happen. Let's make your monster your best friend. You're worried about this? Let's slather it. Let's take this licking it, right? But in the end, the one who cares the least has the most power. The less fear they have, the more power they have over it.
I mean, I'm just asking, if a child is
Yeah.
like, I looked at my phone and I did get sick, like, can they talk themselves into, if they really think that the bacteria is going to get them sick that in that minute, can they make themselves sick? You know what I mean? Or do you have to
Well,
work up to the licking of the phone?
well,
Probably.
well, actually, I actually don't care if they got sick, and they'll get better. How many people do you know got sick and died because they licked something? OCD has been classified by the World Health Organization as in the top 5 most debilitating disorders on this planet. It's terrible. They call them those that suffer or struggle with it, the silent sufferers. And that's the thing is OCD, any book you see that says overcome OCD, that's just not true. That's like saying overcome type 1 diabetes. Not true. What you're going to do is you're going to learn how to deal with it. When your brain triggers, are you going to engage in it or not?
A constant practice.
Yeah, that's right. So are we going to do the 6-hour event, or are we going to do the 10 to 15-minute event or 5-minute event? And what's so crazy is it works. Every single time you do it, it works. The very first exposure they do, it works. And it's so beautiful. This thing that we tell them that's going to happen happens the first time. And they're like, oh my goodness, this is probably the first time I didn't do a compulsion and I got to feel better.
Wow.
I didn't have that taskmaster, whipping me into submission. What we'll do, especially with kids and adults, is the same. We're going to they're scared, they're fearful of what we're going to do. I mean, they've spent a significant amount of time trying to do the opposite of what we're going to get them to do. And so we will sometimes start with what we call a hierarchy, although hierarchy is not what we will end up with, because there's this other process that's even way better and better learning, deeper learning. But we'll do it to help them believe in the process, right? So we'll say, let's start with a small fear. And then we're gonna stay on that fear for a minute, and we're gonna go to a little higher. We're like, yes, isn't that great that thing that used to trigger you no longer triggers you? Fantastic. Well, let's get to a point where I can be licking my phone and it doesn't trigger me. I may not like it, it's not my preference, but it doesn't trigger me. That's a beautiful thing.
And so do you, in terms of trigger, are you watching for the physical response, or are they rating it like, okay, yesterday I was an 8 and today I was more like a 6? How do you assess that?
Yeah. Well, the first time they do the exposure, they were like an 8 or a 9. And by the time they leave, it's not bothering them at all.
Really?
We come back the next day, maybe gives them a 2 or 3. Awesome. And we advance. So then there's this, once we can get that trust and belief in it, because we also are hand holding them. We're walking with them through the depths of hell, right? This is hard stuff.
Yeah.
But then we add what we call inhibitory learning. And inhibitory learning is we create randomness in what they do with their exposure. So we may roll some dice and say, well, the dice says 10, so we're going to go to your worst one, and you're going to face that one. And then we're going to face your number 1, and then your 3 and 7 and 6, and we're going to do this randomness. And the brain learns better. Sometimes this hierarchy, and this is actually the last thing that's gone on in the last 3 or 4 years, is inhibitory learning, where hierarchy gives people this anticipation of like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. And that when we remove that, the learning is just better. And again, the neural pathways, our reduction of symptoms went up when we incorporated that.
This
feature.
is amazing. What an incredible process, and probably really validating for these children. And I know you work with adults and teens and every age, right?
Yeah, we do. And it's, a lot of people will say, well, I don't have time to do this. This is going to take so much time every day. And I say, well, if you don't, you're losing every day.
Yeah.
Every day, most people with OCD, it doesn't stop. They have a baseline. They always are filling it, and what are they going to lose? How nice would it be for these kids to enjoy school instead of just going to school, existing through school,
Yeah.
living through school, living the experiences? They go into the lunchroom and everybody's eating their lunch and having fun and laughing and joking, and they're trying to, but they're a 7 out of 10
Yeah.
in the mental health arena. Let me use those words. There is no other disorder in the world where within 9 to 12 weeks, you can get a 72% reduction in symptoms, or 64 is our baseline. Like, that just doesn't happen.
Does medication have its place? What do you say to that?
We're evidence-based. I love medication. I think the world has this terrible stigma about medication. Well, here's the thing. The brain is a science that hasn't been fully figured out.
And so you're bringing the medication together with the treatment of exposure and response and prevention, and moving forward with those two things
Yes.
in place generally.
Yes,
That's
that's
really
right. And
great.
so medication, even if it gave me a 20% leg up on it, a
Mhm.
20% reduction in symptoms, it makes it a fairer fight to do the therapy.
Once someone has done the 9 to 12 weeks in program, what happens after that? Is there a
Yeah.
check-in or?
So what we do an alumni group. So people are welcome to come weekly to this alumni group. But what we're expecting them to do is to treat this like diabetes. They have to take their insulin every single day.
Yeah, and do this
Every
process that
Yeah.
they've learned, this practice at home.
Yes. And some people are like, well, I don't want to do exposures every day. Okay. Well, my friend who has type 1 diabetes, he doesn't want to take his insulin every day either. But it's about quality of life. What kind
Yeah.
of quality of life you want? If OCD is chronic, they're going to have it till the day they die, unfortunately. That's just the truth. And so they can control it, or is it going to control them? That's their choice.
I'm just looking at, the evidence that you have and your statistics for helping people, and 72% reduction in symptoms is incredible. What a life changer for people. So again, exposure and response prevention. This is the way to go. I will list all of your resources in the show notes, and that people can find you. Is there what's your website? And I'll put it in the notes as well.
Yeah. Thank you. It's the OCD and Anxiety Treatment Center.com.
You don't have to live this way. Your child doesn't have to live this way. I really applaud what you've done, and it sounds like it's very needed if you're opening all these centers this year. I do like to end by offering hope. I was thinking of that scripture that's in a psalm somewhere in the Bible, but the children are an heritage to the Lord. It's our job to help them and assist them, and that they don't have to live this way. It's not their fault. What's the hope that you can offer to people as you've seen people go through your program?
They don't have to keep suffering.
Yeah.
This doesn't have to be their life. They can get back the life that they've lost, or get the life that they've yet to be able to experience.
We so appreciate your time. You've offered a lot of great insights and important information for people. So look this up. I'll put it in the show notes. And thank you so much, Paul Peterson. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being part of today's class. To submit a question or topic for further episodes, please email elementary.schooled@outlook.com. School is out for today, but please remember, when we strengthen a child, we strengthen society.